heard before.
Okay, I think we're there.
Okay.
We've got two lights on this side. Is it transmitting now? And volume?
Have you got volume?
Nothing on the live screen, it's just saying upcoming. Just go out and go back in.
Okay, I think we might have two running at the same time.
Yes. Or no.
We are definitely live, and we're definitely on the volume,
Right, that's coming through now, is it?
but it may be that there are two running at the same time and one's not working.
Wait a minute, here we are. Yeah, sorted.
You've got
Yeah,
one
got
going.
it.
Fine, yeah.
Right,
Okay,
we're there.
let's go. Okay. Good evening, members. Welcome to Sandwich Tollbridge Fund Museum and Archives Committee on, what's today's date? 21st of October, 22nd even. Okay, so Town Clerk, are there any apologies for absences received?
I've received apologies from Councillor Carter.
Right, so Councillor Franklin is absent, we've not
Yes,
received that.
Thank you very much. A personal commitment from Councillor Carter.
Yeah. Okay, moving on to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. Receive any declarations of disclosable pecuniary interest from members in respect of the business to be transacted on the agenda. Do we have any? Okay, moving on to agenda item 3, minutes of the Museum and Archive Committee meeting held on Wednesday the 23rd of July 2025. Are there any comments from anybody? Councillor Black.
Thank you. I wonder, it's really for Millie, I mean, are we covering these days? 725.6, which is issues about the number of volunteers, will you be covering that later? Because it's on the minutes that there's...
The mention of long-term absences?
Yes.
Yeah, actually, I have an update, as always, in the operational update about
Okay,
volunteers, so
okay, and the podcast seems to be working well, that you've got that number. Looking at the action log, do you want to look at the action log just now? I've got two items at the end of the action log, which...
We'll review the action log as part of the meeting.
as part of the meeting, that's fine then, okay. Yeah. And then fine, I'm happy to propose that we accept these.
Yeah, somebody have to second? Councillor Ripley? So that's 2 abstentions.
2 abstentions.
Thank you very much. So, now if you can entertain yourself whilst I sign the minutes. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. So before we move on, could we just have a quick recap of the 2 actions I think are outstanding? Maybe more, but if you could go through those, maybe that would be helpful.
So the website is on here for January. Basically some other work has taken priority, so that probably would have previously been slightly earlier than January, but it's been moved, I think. So that has now sort of become more of a priority. I've been able to have more capacity for that content is done, but then there is the process of working through accessibility, things like obviously the alt text for images, so I have to write descriptions for all of them, things like that. And then also layouts for different types of screens, so mobiles and tablets, so kind of I'll have to go through that as well. But like I said, good progress. We photographed a lot of the collection items from the museum. We just last week photographed items from the collection store, so we will have not the whole collection, but a good portion of the collection online for people to have a look at, which is really great, and lots more history. So hopefully it will be a really
Okay, thank you.
good website.
Can I just check then, is the target date still January?
I think I think
we can
so.
use that.
And I will have a look at where I get to. Hopefully I'll be able to spend some
Got a
time.
comment from Councillor Anderson.
Well, it's not a comment, it's a question, because I'm not clear, and I'm sure this is something that possibly has just passed me by, but why do we have to have a separate website for the museum? Why can't the museum collection and all the information about it be included in the town council website?
Well, I mean, if we want we always had a separate website, and this project was making it much more professional. You know, looking at other examples of museum websites, there's a lot of information to have. So to then be able to put that onto the town council website might be difficult. Also, one of the things that I'm hoping to be able to do with the new website is make a page where people could donate to us online, which we don't have at the moment, and obviously it would be confusing if the town council website had a donation page, even if it was specific to the museum, I think. Those are my reasons.
Can I ask a follow-up? I'm not completely convinced by that rationale, but it does seem to me to be important that the two websites should share the same kind of branding in terms of colours, format, of fonts, all that kind of thing. Because I mean, the museum is an integral part of the activities of this, well, the Tollbridge Fund and this council. And I think it's a bit strange, and I think other people have also thought it a bit strange that there are these two websites.
We actually had a project which has been delayed, just purely availability, getting the group of volunteers into one room has been difficult, and then I've had other things take priority. But we did have a project approved for branding of the museum specifically, which was looking at the museum's logo and the colours. The fonts, I kind of, in terms of the sort of paragraph, you know, that kind of text, not necessarily titles, I assumed we would use the town council's kind of format for all that anyway. But that was a project that has been approved already. So when I'm able to get the group together and we can work on that, the idea was that a branding guide would be given to the committee to look over, and then that would hopefully serve as the document that's referred to in the future, because the museum's branding is quite inconsistent and confusing, because we've had different logos and things like that over the years. So but that was approved by the committee previously, that project.
So from my perspective, I tend to agree a lot with what Claire says, but I think on this particular issue, I'm less perplexed about the fact we've got a separate site, because I think the museum is there to serve a particular purpose. I find it quite a dynamic site, which is great, and it feels like a museum vehicle for the museum. So I'm less convinced about the need to integrate it. My question would be, and apologies if I just haven't looked properly on the town council website, is there an easy automatic prompt to being able to access the museum?
I believe there is, but we can adjust that.
You can easily link it. I've been having thoughts with Paige, which are completely separate and not for thinking about here, but
Yeah, and of course course, the museum is under STBF, so there is a distinction from STC, but of course STBF in its broader sense is on the town council website.
On the new website, I have, so there's information about how we're funded, and that will connect, I think, also about the committee, which connects to the relevant town council pages. There's also a section that mentions the Guildhall, because sometimes inquiries for hiring come through the museum's inbox, so it says, you know, it directs people to the right page on the town council in relation to the Guildhall as well.
Thank you, unless there's any other need to. No? Okay, moving on.
Yes, so the Roman Bowl is on here, conservation work, so I've been talking to the National Conservation Service who visit us because they deal with the Magna Carta and the Charter of the Forest, and they're willing to monitor it, but I have told them that as part of the project, when we acquired it, we need to do that conservation work, that they are hopefully due to visit us anyway in November, so I will have a proper conversation then about their thoughts. They've been really helpful with that, and even if they don't do the conservation work for us, I think it's best to get their advice. So that's why they came back to me, I think, after the last meeting, saying sort of, we don't think that needs to happen yet, but I've gone back to them since and have.
Could I suggest we revise the target date then, if you're comfortable with it and the stakeholders are saying that it's not as urgent as we suggested, so what is a sensible target date then?
I think if we say perhaps January or February, with the aim of it being back in place for the peak season sort of in spring, that's what the reason for it. So it would go off of, it would be taken off display for that work.
For that period.
Hopefully in, like I said, off
We could revise it to January if people are in.
May I just ask, if they decide they're not going to do the conservation work, are there enough other bodies that are competent to do this work?
So there is the conservator that originally did the work when it, that stabilised it when it was excavated. But as I said, because we work with them, I feel sort of confident in their advice. So even if they advise on, I mean, if I said to them that we want them to do the work, then obviously they would do that work. They have already given advice on it anyway. So I think another conversation is best, and then I will have a look probably at the quotes for how much that would cost.
Okay, but there are backups if
Yeah,
they
so there's
that's fine.
Yeah, there's other people that could do
Okay,
that.
thank you very much. The next action.
The last one on here is in relation to the discussion about the temporary exhibition space, the VIC, and the Hive, which was an action for the town park. So I don't know if you want to say anything about that one.
I'm just sort of slightly getting to grips with this. It
Yeah.
seems like it's a bigger issue.
It is.
Yes.
I've had chuntry chats with Lindsay. We've sort of just started having a chuntry chat. I think I've had a chuntry chat with a few councillors, but I've had no formal discussions with anyone. But I think we're definitely brewing up for that, if you see what I mean.
Okay. So could I suggest we move it to January, but recognising the fact we've had a change of town clerk, so we've been kicking this one down the road a number of times for 2 years. But I know that you're seriously looking at this as an issue that needs to be resolved.
What are we trying exactly to resolve? Because that would be helpful.
So from my perspective, I think there are a number of differing views in terms of the relationship between the tourist offer, the inquiries point, and the museum itself. And that just swirls around. There are papers on it, there are proposals from at least one councillor, but it's about doing this collaboratively rather than by imposing somebody's view. But it's not an easy one to unpick.
So it's basically where the role of the Hive, the tourist office, and the museum, basically.
Yeah.
Is that
it's the trouble is there've been so many different very strongly held opinions about this. And the issue is also, if it's a visitor information centre, how much do we rely upon the older technology and how much do we go electronic and so on. So I would suggest it might be an idea to get 3 or 4 people together in a room and say, look, let's try to hammer out what we're going to do. Because there are very different views about this. And obviously wearing my tourism forum hat, they're saying, well, come on, this has been going on for a long time, as Councillor Chuka said. It's been through no individual fault, it's been kicked down the road quite a few times, hasn't it? Because it's a little bit thorny, and we had issues, the way it was initially raised with some museum volunteers, created an atlas, I think.
Okay.
So just 2 more points on that. I would just say that the Hive should, my personal view is, the discussion again, it's long-standing. We said that it was temporary, but I don't see why that can't be decided out with the decision about where to run other aspects, unless somebody contradicts that. Because for me, it's important that Hive is a temporary exhibition space, and we gave a temporary sanctions for it to be a temporary exhibition space, but that has now lapsed. We were due to come back on that, I believe, in the past, so I prefer, I don't know what many would think, but do we not need to just get that sorted? Sorry.
Yes, I was going to say, I mean, we must take care with our use of the word temporary.
Yes.
Because are we talking about a temporary
No,
exhibition space or a temporary exhibition space, i.e. a space for temporary exhibitions? I think if we're talking about a space for temporary exhibitions, we have to have before us a programme of temporary exhibitions which will fill that space on a permanent basis, or at least as far ahead as one can possibly plan, say 3 years.
Okay.
In other words, that there should be a programme of temporary exhibitions, a feasible programme of temporary exhibitions which will fill that space on a permanent basis for 3 years. Otherwise the space will continue to be empty for periods, sometimes quite long periods, I imagine. So I would advise the museum manager to devise such a programme.
So what, I'll go across to Millie and say, but I'll just say I was being deliberately provocative by saying a temporary exhibition space. I know exactly what we're trying to achieve. It may be chicken and egg, but I'll allow Millie to speak on this, because unless you know that you've got the space, it might be difficult to actually programming exhibitions.
Yeah. What I'll say is the phrase that we can use, that some museums use, I'm used to using temporary exhibition, but special exhibition is also a phrase that gets used, so we can always use that instead, so we don't confuse anyone. So even if there is a programme, what we will say is that there will be periods where it's not open, because changeover of exhibitions is a process that takes a lot of time. If I don't have volunteers assisting me on that, that is a difficult process. There's a lot of, obviously it's the objects as well, so it's actually handling them out of cases and things like that, packing them properly and moving them to the right place. Then they have to be returned to the right boxes, things like that. There's also paperwork for moving objects that has to be written, so I have to note down the things that are moved. It is a process. So obviously a programme of exhibitions should be fine. What I will also say is that we talked about other ways of using it and having community exhibitions and things like that as well, which I think is a really good idea. Even if it's focused on a particular item in the collection, something like that, that people build on. I think there's a few different options that isn't just a programme based on our collection. Obviously there's loans as well from other museums, but that's
Thank you.
In terms of me producing a useful report that will move this discussion forward, perhaps I could meet individually in the first instance with all the different stakeholders, because I think that's a more sympathetic forum for to make their feelings on this matter to be, and then I can perhaps present that as a, you know, because Millie knows pros and cons of all the various reasons. Lindsay might have a different sort of perspective on it, and the councillors have got a different perspective, and perhaps if I can sort of draw together all the pros and cons of all the various different options from all the different stakeholders, maybe that might offer a sort of a view in the round of all the issues, perhaps, that might then enable a bit more of a clear route through, maybe. Would that be helpful?
So, okay.
Okay, so if I will do that by January, and then once we've got a couple of options from that, maybe that's the point to then bring everyone together.
Yeah.
Does that sound like a plan?
Yes. My only question is, in terms of the business plan, if you can go and refer back to where that as an activity sits, it might be with this committee. So just need to make sure in terms of governance and process that the reporting is into the right body, be it an STC body or be it this committee.
Okay, to VLC /
So either it's this body that drives it forward with other stakeholders, or this body is a stakeholder for another body or report. Yeah.
So the idea is I'll one-on-one pros and cons basically with the stakeholders, and then after that a round table.
And what my only advice would be that we need to look at this as close to nil cost. So this isn't an opportunity, for example, for any individuals to come up with some great ideas about investment in signage or new desks or etc. that has a cost of say £15,000-20,000. That's not the point of this exercise. It's about the actual delivery as opposed to anything else.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on to agenda item 4, public participation. This is where a 10-20 minute session is set aside for members of the public to make representations at the meeting with respect to the business on the agenda. Do we have any requests?
No.
No. Agenda item 5, this is an update from Millie on museum operations, and attachment 5 supports this agenda item.
So, in the last meeting, we saw that our visitor numbers were down. They still are. I did mention that we have a language school who visited in summer. We were part of their programme. They brought, I think, approximately about 1,000 students, if not more. There was a huge number of them. We aren't part of their programme. They change that every year. So it was likely that we would have had a decrease in numbers because we just don't have those people visiting. But so last year we got to, I think we got over 13,000, which was the goal. This year I kept the goal the same. I actually think it's more likely to be around 12,000, which is 1,000 extra compared to 2023. Had we not had, if we ignore 2024 with that increase that we got from the school. I also, so in the last agenda, I had the numbers compared to the temporary exhibitions because that was asked of me in the meeting before that. We didn't have June and July figures then, but if we have a look now at 2024 and 25 compared to especially July, I think you can see the difference in numbers, and that was when we had the D-Day anniversary exhibition. So that's interesting, and that was a proper exhibition. We had a loan from the Royal Engineers Museum and marketing to run alongside it. So that just to flag that because now we have that information. Our donations and income are actually increased though, I believe, yes. So we're about just over £500 increase compared to last year, which is interesting. Because of that increase, I thought it'd be useful to have a look at the visitor numbers and the correlation just to see. So there's a couple of graphs just to have a look at how So I think 2024, there's some correlation there really. 2025 is, I think, quite a strange one. So I'm not entirely sure. Obviously the peaks are in the similar places, sort of peak season, summertime. But yeah, I just thought that was an interesting thing to have a look at. Social media figures are pretty much the same, that they fluctuate, which is always the way. The comparisons show, so our reach, so on Facebook in particular, is lower, but actually we have more people following us. So more people are kind of, I suppose, choosing to see our content rather than happening to see it, which I think is a positive sign. And we have quite an increase of followers on Instagram, which is also very good. The podcast has almost all been published. I've had a fair amount of evidence from local people just talking to me that they've been listening to it, that they like it. We also now kind of made a connection with St Clement's Church through that, which is really nice. So we'll have a discussion with them and hopefully do some work with them in the future. And so yeah, it's just gradually increasing. The audience actually from the data shows that the higher proportion are younger people, so kind of early to mid 20s, which was the aim of the project. We wanted some people around those ages to be working on it and producing it to encourage people of those age range to engage with the museum, because that's an age range that we don't really find engaging too much. Volunteers, Council Black asked about volunteers. So I think the long-term absences, we had a few of them. Most of them have come to an end. One of them will come to an end in November, so that's great. So we're doing better. We also so I will be having a meeting with a couple of new potential volunteers soon. So things are picking up there. The Canterbury Christchurch project, this says 3, but actually now we have 4 volunteers, which is the amount of volunteers that I was aiming for that. So we've got all of them on the project, which is great. Which means that the total number on here is actually 32 volunteers currently, not 31. So that's going well. And actually one of those volunteers was, so I was about to mention the University of Kent's employment scheme. One of them joined us as part of that at the beginning of the year and has come back to volunteer, so that's good. We are still part of that scheme. I've got a placement taking place at the moment, and that's always really positive and it's going well. In terms of collections management, our inventory, we've reached over 15,000 entries, which is very exciting. And the Christchurch project, they've done over 100. They've obviously only just started working on the postcard collection, but that's going very well. The timeline, so I did recalculate the inventory project timeline. It actually is much earlier, so I think it was originally May 2027 to end, but I set the deadline as December to allow for any kind of absences or actually having more collection than I predicted, because we don't know exactly how much we have. But actually I recalculated it and came out with January 2027 is when we should finish it. This is based on an estimate of 20,000 entries or of objects or items to enter. I think that number is probably going to be higher, but it's quite hard to predict what the figure is going to be. But obviously if we get to 20,000 by January 2027, we've got a whole year still, so I haven't changed that deadline. We had our art exhibition, which went really well. It was quite a successful evening. I think everyone had a nice time. And we had a collaboration, or we did some work with the infant school for that, which was really nice partnership to start building. And finally, the museum, so as per the access plan, we now have a large print guide, which I've just recently finished. Hopefully we'll have an easy read guide soon, and then I will work on the best way to make those available in the museum for our visitors.
Thank you. Can I have open up for any comments.
Yes. I think this is an excellent report and I find it really fascinating. Thank you. But I do have two questions. One is, do you know why the language school is no longer visiting?
But they change their programme every year. So that particular year, they obviously have done some research and decided to visit us, and then the next year they change it. I did follow up and ask them, but yeah, they visit different places.
Okay, thank you. And the second question is about these helpful graphs that you've produced. And the one in 2025, the donation income shot up in June, although the visitor numbers actually went down a little bit. And I wondered whether you knew why that was. It's just occurred to me because I think I do know why. Well, I don't. What do you know why? And the second, yes, and then I've got a follow-up question to that. Yeah.
I am not sure without having a closer look. There's a few different reasons. It could be that we kind of happened to sort of have more stock at that time that got updated.
I think I know what
It
it is.
could be that there were some particular visits that gave us donations. I think actually in June, I think we had a couple of tours in June.
One of them was the one
yes,
that I was
yeah,
running.
of course. And
Yes,
I remember
and
when
I
that
always
happened.
say to them, it's £5 each, and you've got to,
Yes.
and I make certain that they do.
Yeah.
So that, but I do wonder, because there are some museums that are really quite smart about getting people to donate, although they're in theory free. And I wondered whether there are other museums that we could consult with and find out how they actually do force visitors who think they're getting a free lunch, as it were, but actually they fork out quite substantial sums of money, and whether we could get some advice about how to develop a culture of actually paying it.
So I find that from kind of just observing in the museum, a lot of the time the donations are from people who, obviously it depends on the person, but a lot of the time the ones that are very interested in the first place, that spend a lot of time with the volunteers and have some good conversations, are usually the ones that go away very grateful for their experience, and they are usually the people that donate. And people do put, people quite often will put a note into the box. Sometimes people put a £10 note in, which is quite a lot. So I have had training on this previously when I worked in a different role. And one of the things, there are ways of doing it, but I think in terms of how we interact with the public, I don't think that is a concern. People come in and ask if it's free. The volunteers will always tell them, it's free, but if you enjoy it, you can donate, and that helps us. And they will explain that. One of the things that I think, for me, that is important is actually the messaging that we have in the museum. So we have the wall, the perfect wall by the front door that is obviously damaged and needs repairing. That is the place for the messaging about donating, and the idea would be that actually the box would be there. And if we could, then a card reader, which is a repeat. So it's a case of you say, you just literally, you tap your card to donate £4, for example, and it just repeats. And it really reduces, and it sounds terrible, but it reduces the time to think about it a lot, because you just think, I had a good time, and then you tap the card and it's done. There's no looking for money. Exactly. And I think that's a really, that would be something that's something that most museums have. And it would be great if we could have that, but like I said, that the wall needs dealing with first.
Any other comments? Councillor Morehouse?
I volunteer on Sunday afternoons, not every Sunday afternoon. Sunday afternoons I have volunteered. I do know that around about a third of the people that come in donate in some way, shape or form.
We need it to be 2/3.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Just coming back to the language schools, I appreciate they changed the curriculum this time round, so is there any indication they might change the curriculum again and start coming back?
My understanding is that they change it every year. I will contact them and ask them if they kind of have a cycle where they come back to, you know, to
Yes.
places within a few years. I will get in touch and ask them that.
I may have missed it, but did you say you was suggesting that we should be trying to charge something like £2.50 per head for large groups?
Yes, I don't know where I put that in.
No, I can't.
I remember writing
read
that.
that
Where
too.
did I write?
I thought I'd highlighted it, but it may be on another paper.
It was a suggestion for, per person. If we just had because I advise people to donate, but if we just had a fee that or not, not a fee, but a suggested donation, usually people will agree to that. And I think that would be useful. And part of me thinking about that was that I was writing about how we handle large group visits on the new website, and I would have put it on there that I actually made a form, and within the form it says, there is a box that kind of, it prompts people because it says, how would you donate? So would you like us to invoice you, or can you do it when you arrive? So it sort of, it prompts people in a way to think about that. I definitely wrote that, and I can't.
I know you did, because I picked it up. But
it might be in the, is it in the committee handbook?
Yes.
Handbook.
And yes, you're right in that.
But we can change that.
It's just with the town tours, the difficulty we've got is it's a little bit of a whistle-stop tour. And we do, I certainly encourage, and I think a lot of my colleagues do, to say, look, if you've got time now, please come back. But for 10 minutes, which is 10 or 15 minutes, showing the courtroom, it's very difficult for us to persuade them to.
No, but it wouldn't be for town tours where you're doing your tour and you bring them in. It's purely for when people, if we have lots of different groups. So for example, say a sort of group of adults, 30 people or something that want to visit, it actually does require a lot of our time. So
Yes.
we see the volunteers might do tours. We actually divide the group, so there's a fair amount of organisation there. And obviously you think someone comes in and maybe donates £10 just for themselves, it's sort of, and then we might have a group that doesn't. So if we just have a kind of suggestion that is the suggestion, makes things much easier for me because I can tell everyone that figure.
Yeah.
I'm happy for it to be different to what I've suggested though, that's fine.
Yeah, two comments. One is £2.50. People don't carry cash and certainly don't carry coins anymore. So I think it should be around level. But the other thing is, I have recently been looking at these digital collection boxes, and I'm not clear at all why we have to have wall space for one, because you can purchase things to put them on, columns and so on, and they actually don't cost very much. I think the one that I was looking at for the Jubilee Centre was something like, well, it was either £200 or £300, and until you've collected 10,000, there's no ongoing rental fee of any kind, and it also deals with gift aid. So I'm not clear why we need to wait for a wall. Is it not an investment?
So firstly, so we do have a card machine in the museum, so people, if £2.50, they can do that by card. It goes through the till system, and we might even be able to add kind of the visit as a product, and then it's quite easy. Volunteers can I can see what that's specifically for. The wall space is, firstly, having things to secure things. So we would want to secure, ideally, our physical donation box, which we will keep to the wall.
Okay.
But it's also about the messaging behind what your donation does, why it helps. If we can say £5 does this, that is very useful.
Yes, it is.
So that's really why we want that space, and to also maybe refer to the Tolbridge Fund and say that we sit underneath this charity to encourage people to kind of understand that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we ask to receive a note, can I just ask, in the last magazine, STC magazine, we did run an article and sought volunteers. Were there any responses from anybody of interest?
Yes. So
Yes,
I have 2 meetings next week with new potential volunteers. The specific need was for front of house volunteers.
Yeah.
I have had various other interest, but it's more of a capacity issue with collections volunteers,
Yeah.
because I have to be there to supervise. But yeah, that's some interest.
Okay, so you've had some responses.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. Thank you very much. So we're asked to receive a note with our updates. Can I thank Millie for a very informative and clear report again and well delivered, so thank you for that. I'm happy to propose we receive and note it. Somebody happy to second? Councillor Mallet? Sorry, line of vision and all that. And if we vote on that? Councillor Morehouse, are you with us? Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 6. That was 6. So, yeah. Moving on to agenda item 7. This is the Canterbury Christchurch project. Oh, I tell you, sorry, apologies. I don't know what I've done. I've gone into the minutes from the last meeting, so I was right. So this is agenda item 6. Project in partnership with Digital Drama, attachment 6.
Yes, so it is actually, it's an extension of the Canterbury Christchurch University project. An organisation called Digital Drama have been in touch. They would like to apply for funding to extend that project with Christchurch. What they would like to do is, so I think they would be working with us and Deal Museum on this, and they want to work with, so they've said, for volunteers from Sandwich to collect oral history. So I think they will be teaching and training them how to do that, the kind of interview questions you might ask to collect that. And then in creative writing as well, and they want to create a song of some kind in relation to the heritage of both of the towns. And then perhaps it will be recorded with vocal performers, and then the kind of digitised audio would be made available to us. And then we would perhaps have an event. I think they've talked about making a film that includes extracts of the audio and things like that. So it's a really nice extension to that project. I think it sounds really interesting.
Yeah.
My major concern is capacity, which is why I haven't actually recommended a decision. I've asked for the committee to consider it, because I'm always keen to do projects that benefit the museum. But I'm very aware that I know they are aware, and they said they don't want to cause lots of extra work for the museum. But it always does kind of do that. So yeah, my biggest concern is capacity to facilitate this. The Christchurch project, it takes some of my administrative time, because you have to contact people. We have meetings every month for that, and then I have the volunteers in for 3 hours every week as well. So that is taking up time already. So that was my concern with agreeing to that project. So I don't know if that's any thoughts.
So again, we could, and I'll open up for any comments on it, but we can caveat the decision in any case, so it doesn't have to be a straightforward yes or no. So, Councillor Black first.
I was just going to ask the question, what else could be done for a short period of time to free up more time for you? Because obviously inevitably it's going to take a lot of time, and trying to estimate how much time is very difficult. Are there some short-term things that can be put later, or other things to be done? Because I think this is very much more like what the local museum should be trying to do. Have you had any discussions with the town clerk or with anyone else about trying to free up some ways of trying to free up a bit of time?
We had a very brief sort of mentioned,
Okay,
but
it's
not
early
really.
days.
Yeah,
Early days,
but
yes.
it's the thing that is, I think, the most difficult, because I work Wednesday to Sunday.
Mm.
And then I have volunteers on Friday morning and then Wednesday afternoon. I actually, in terms of working with other people, responding to people's emails, having meetings, I'm limited because most people work Monday to Friday. So it reduces when I can do those things. So that is really the issue. The volunteers, the collections volunteers in particular. So that's really what can take up my time, I think. But they are very capable, and if there's a major thing where I have to go to a meeting or something, usually absolutely fine to get on with what they're doing. It's just really maybe when we have people that I might kind of step up and work with if we're missing other volunteers, things like that. I don't know is the answer to how to free up my time. I think what would need to be done actually is that I need to keep a good kind of schedule maybe for a couple of weeks of just what I've been doing, because there's so many little bits and pieces that I do. It's very hard to say in any day what I've done. I sort of work on lots of different things. Yeah, so I had collections volunteers in today. I've worked on the volunteer rota. I've done various bits and pieces. So I think perhaps that would be a useful thing to do, to start with, just to have a look at where time gets spent.
Councillor Rick.
I was just going to comment that this looks a very intensive, time-consuming type of. It might, I'm sure it's a great thing to do, but it seems to me that a lot of time would be taken up in doing it. A lot of time.
It might be a case of if they want to work with volunteers, it might be a case of me talking to them about we can facilitate talking to the volunteers here, but I might not be in the room when that happens. So we can do the training and things like that, and they can do what they want to do, but I might not necessarily be available. Yeah.
Councillor.
Looking at the description of what they're after, this seems to be more nostalgic sandwich focused, which is, it's almost done already in many respects, because it's describing, saying the lived experience. Nostalgic sandwich is generally the lived rather than what the museum focuses on, which is, I would suggest, it is right up to date, but it is generally speaking memorialising those that have been, where you have to do research beyond asking somebody, what was it like back in the 70s? Dare I say, from my point of view, the 70s was only a few years ago, but it's a long time ago, and that is, I would say, the 70s, the 60s, possibly the 50s. This is what it's aimed at. And on the one hand, if this was considered from a view from the museum, then not to exclude nostalgic sandwich, because they do put a lot of effort into that. If the museum wasn't because of time constraints, couldn't do it, to actually pass them on and say, speak to these guys because they're doing it. That's just a view.
Yeah, perhaps I can have a meeting with them and go over these things. I had an initial meeting. I know that they are worried about time because they will be applying for funding, and so they need to do their application, and they will need me to write a letter of support for that. So perhaps I'll ask them if we can have a meeting, and maybe Nostalgic Sandwich, perhaps we can discuss some kind of partnership with the museum where they perhaps supply the volunteers if they'd like to, or they connect with us in a way where we can still facilitate it in a way, but it limits, it just doesn't take up as much capacity. example, running an event in relation to this, that does take some work, but actually that would be a really great thing for the museum as well. So perhaps I will go back to them. with
Yes,
some
I'm
thoughts.
going
Is
to
that okay?
suggest that, because I think actually when you look at the bullets, a number of them could actually be done away from you in any case, because I think it's probably within their project. So, I mean, we can the benefit of it, you're very strong on that, so I think we can recommend support for it, subject to further discussions that you have, before making that resource commitment, which is what you're concerned about.
Yeah.
So I think I would propose that you support the project intention, and if people are happy to vote on that basis, but then leave it for you to then have that follow-up discussion to then report back to us if you need to.
Yeah,
Is that okay?
if I'm happy after that discussion,
Yeah.
am I allowed to
Yes.
go ahead with it?
Yeah,
Okay,
I'm happy with that if others are as well. So proposing that we support the initiative, subject to the museum manager being able to provide the commitments that a further discussion will outline.
Sorry, so who's EC's
I
proposing?
proposed it.
Second?
Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I'll
Yeah. Spreading the love. That's unanimous, thank you. Okay. Is that okay?
Sorry, their organisation.
So you might perhaps do this in partnership with.
Isn't Councillor Franklin's
Councillor Franklin's a good source.
would be a very good source, because
Yeah.
I know he's been very keen on also things like the White Mill.
Okay. Moving on to agenda item 7, the committee handbook. We have a few attachments. That's 7A and 7B that support this. Is to receive a report about the committee handbook.
So the organisational health check, which was done quite a while ago, kind of flagged that actually it'd be quite useful to have this kind of document for committee members. There will also be one for volunteers, which it gives an outline of operations in the museum, how we do things currently, and also some of the guidance that we have to follow for accreditation, things like that. So my thought is that in kind of April, it would be checked and updated if things have been changed, and then in May, if there are new committee members, it can be supplied to them to just to support them and give them some more information about the museum. I know, so in the 2019 forward plan, it was flagged that members don't necessarily get any information about the museum. So I thought that would be a useful thing, and it also supports me in my role as well.
Thank you. I'll take comments, and I went through it. There's a lot of pages to it, but I mean it's all helpful information. I just had one very small comment, but within the document there is a structure of roles, and I just wondered if you want to separate out just the museum element that reports into the town clerk, because if not, then you're going to have to always be trying to catch up, because the current structure within the STC operations is not reflected on where we are. So the easiest option would be to take all the blue out and just have your structure into the town clerk.
Yeah, that's fine. This is so I have to supply this for accreditation.
Yep.
So when I was writing about staffing, I just thought that would be a useful thing to add in, but I can make an adjustment.
It's not too
helpful.
it'll always be up to date.
Yeah.
So we have a property manager that's very innovative and he's always coming up with new proposals. Councillor Back.
I have 3 fairly short items. The first one is, I was a little bit confused as to why the purpose of the museum is different from the mission statement. Is that because that's a standard 1.1? Is that just a standard text? Because
sorry.
no, because it strikes me that actually the mission statement is much more to the point for this museum. But if it's a standard statement, you can't do anything with that.
No, it's not. That's a general purpose for local
Correct.
museums. It's just an introduction of this is what museums can do and what they can be. And then obviously our statement of purpose is very specific to legislation.
Thank you.
And then the mission statement is the museum specific mission.
On 3.3, the software that you've got for inventory and catalogue, is that up to what you require?
So the software that we have is called Modes Complete. It is it's a museum collections management system.
Mm-hmm.
However, we have been using spreadsheets because we had an update to our IT systems and our server, which obviously broke and died basically. So
Yes.
there's still a little bit of the process of transferring the computers and talking to cloudy IT about getting everything connected appropriately. I'm very aware of, especially for front of house volunteers, we do have a new computer, but it's because of when I'm available, I would have to be here on Monday or Tuesday, and then it's making it kind of where it needs to be for Wednesday morning, so that we don't have a major panic of lots of volunteers not understanding it. So I would just need to think through the process of how the best steps to make sure it's pretty much as the same as it is now.
Okay, thank you. And then the last one is, do we have a major decolonisation issue? Obviously we don't have things like Benin bronzes and so on, but it is obviously a hot topic for many museums. Do we have a large problem in your perception or not? I can't think of an awful lot of things.
No, we have a few items, but you know, we have a lot of collections work in our documentation plan that would be done before we got to exploring those items. As far as I'm aware, I don't have a huge amount of information about them at the moment, so part of that documentation process will be collecting that paperwork, gathering it up. Obviously we can't think about how we might deal with that if we don't know what the item is. So that's an important thing. It might be in that case we actually, you know, there's another museum somewhere that would benefit more from that item, because perhaps it's not from here, it's not an item we can display or we can tell a story about necessarily. Somewhere else might benefit from it, but that's a long way off.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, there's no other comments. We're being asked to receive and note the museum's committee handbook. I'm happy to propose that we do that. Councillor Back was just shades ahead of everybody else to second it, so these people are keen to finish. Moving on to agenda item 8, which we do know about, and I'd like to, as many of us already have, but I'll make sure it's on record, just to give congratulations from us as a committee to successfully achieving accreditation. So it was a great job done. I know it took you a lot of effort over a period of time, so we need to make sure that that's recognised. Unless anybody wants to drill down into the accreditation, do you want to maybe just give a quick few points? Yep.
So we are fully accredited until our next return, which is usually requested within the next 5 years of being accredited. The Arts Council are still behind, so we don't know what will happen then. But the usual process is that we are fully accredited, but they provide areas for development. So things that they flag that they would like an update on next time. So I had to do that this time. I had to update on those areas of development from 2016.
Yep.
So again, so we have they clarify ownership of historic loans. I am aware, I suspect we do have some what we call permanent loans in our collection. They are not something that we're supposed to do anymore. But it is very hard to identify them without a full inventory. So that is obviously piece of work that's being done. To be honest, the inventory I think covers a lot of these points, and as I said, December 2027 is when it's due to be done. So by the time they're asking us in terms of accreditation, we should have done that process and be in the process of following the documentation plan to deal with a lot of these items. So yeah, that's the historic loans. Again, they want to confirm that we've reached inventory level documentation by 2029, which I think will be fine. Like I said, 2027 is the aim. That's the minimum. So they always want to know if you have a full inventory or if you're working towards it. Obviously, we're working towards it at the moment. Care and consultation policy. So that's at the next planned review. So next time it's reviewed, they just wanted a couple of extra things in there. But that's fine. That's not difficult to do. So that will just be done and it will come to the committee. What I will add is that how the policy is communicated, our organisation structure does make that quite difficult in a way, because there are members of staff that don't work for the museum but will encounter the collection, and so I think perhaps a discussion with the town clerk, if that's okay, about how we just make other members of staff aware of these things would be very useful from our perspective. So I think that would be something that we might have a discussion about. If that's okay. The care and conservation plan, again, I think again, it's quite hard to have this information about the collection when we don't have a full list of everything. So I think these things will come with time. Last one is the update on the audience development. Again, I think the next plan will have that information anyway. It will be a kind of let's assess based on what we said last time situation, but these plans should all be reviewed anyway every time before the next return. So that's another thing that I've added here. It's quite common that the plans and policies get forgotten about until the next time a museum gets asked for accreditation. So in an attempt to avoid that happening, I've made a little timetable. It's mostly for me, but I thought it would be useful for the committee to see it, which just tells me when I need to review them, and that will be probably a case of me reading through. If there's anything that I think needs changing, I will change it and provide it for another approval. Otherwise, I think what I will do, if it's okay, is just obviously adjust the date on it. If there's no change to it, just adjust it and adjust the next review date to a year later. So that's all of that. And then I thought it would probably be useful to put the terms and conditions for the accreditation scheme in as well, which is quite important. So there's a few bits and pieces, like drastic changes to the organisation where the Arts Council would want to know about those things.
Thank you very much.
Has the drawing up of inventories identified any missing items?
So we won't identify them yet. What will happen is we are basically listing all the physical objects we have, and then we will go through all of the documentation and it will be matched to that list of physical items. So what we'll then find is we might have, for example, I don't know, an object entry sheet that says an object came in, we can't locate it, but we don't have an exit sheet for it, and then that will be how we'll find items that are missing. That's the process. So we won't have flagged any that are missing yet.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so the committee's been asked to receive and note the above report regarding accreditation. So I propose that we do that. I'll go with Councillor Ripley this time. We'll straight in there on.
I feel honoured.
All good stuff. So final agenda item, date and time of next meeting, Wednesday the 28th of January. Although it says 2025, I'm sure we're not Back to the Future, so could we make it 2026 please, or else we've missed it. Thank you very much. There had to be one little mistake.
Yeah, I know.
This pack's excellent. I'd just like to say, in terms of the meeting pack, it's excellent. And
Yes.
it's easy to
Very
read
good.
through.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have other examples that aren't quite as slick. So thank you very much.
Street?